Welcome to another edition of Women in Baseball on Baseball Biz on Deck with host Mark Corbett. Today's guest, Ryan Woodward, founder of Women in Baseball Week, discusses the history, events, and the current activities of Women in Baseball Week, which begins today.
Welcome to Baseball Biz on Deck. And on deck today, I have with me a very special guest, Mr. Ryan Woodward, who's been with us before. Recently, I think we were talking about the Baseball Women's Heritage Trail. And today, we're going to talk about something, and Ryan, you can correct me on this. I think this started back in 2017 in Women in Baseball Week. So welcome, Ryan. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for having me on again.
It's always a blast, brother. So I love it because I see everything you're doing with the International Women's Baseball Center there, with the Women in Baseball Week, with the Heritage Trail, and things I'm sure I'm not thinking of at the moment that you also have in play. But my gosh, I like this, the Women's in Baseball Week, because it brings it all to the fore. It brings it up to people's minds. And we're not talking about what's just going on in Rockford, Illinois. We're talking about international. Can you tell us a little bit about the mission of this event?
Sure. So this started, I had just joined the IWBC board in 2016. And so as a lot of the time happens when you join a new organization, you kind of sit back, you sit back for like the first year and just see how it goes. And, I don't know that I'm really supposed to be doing anything. And that's kind of what I was doing. I was also finishing grad school in Pittsburgh, and it's not like I didn't have enough to do at the time. But I was thinking of ways, how do we get, our mission out there? How do we get what projects we're focused on and need help with kind of in a way that costs $0 at the time? We're a new organization. I wasn't really sure what I was doing. So that kind of came to me, was this idea of a celebratory period of time. I wasn't sure at first, is it a month? Is it a day? We thought a week was a good stretch, see how that goes. And because I was in library school, the thought was, how do we promote women's baseball? How do we tell the stories? How do we get more people aware of the history and everything like that outside of the baseball field, right? So libraries obviously was a big part for me, and we could have libraries promote what they have in their collections. What books do you have? What archives do you have? And are you going to do any special programming around it? And then this quickly led to museums, archives, basically, and it's kind of the spirit behind the Heritage Trail too. Where can you learn about women's baseball beyond just watching a game, at a ballpark? So that's how it started. And I always like to share the St. Louis Cardinals Museum and Hall of Fame was doing a special exhibit at the time on women in baseball in the Cardinals organization throughout history. And so I had reached out to them and just said, hey, we have this little social media project. It'd be great if you shared something. But the actual St. Louis Cardinals were the first post ever about Women in Baseball Week. And it was, come see our exhibit. Here's some history you might not have known about. But then I kind of got spoiled with that being like, what led off in the very first year. But it's been everything since. It's really, when I approach people about it, and they always want to know, okay, what exactly do I need to do? And I tell them just to think of it more as a holiday than really a project. How would you celebrate women in baseball? Like, how could you or your organization do it? Do you want to have a tournament? Do you want to just highlight people who maybe work on your staff? Do you want to talk about your own local history? It's that kind of a thing. So from there, it's kind of blossomed into, it is tournaments. There's a lot of excitement early on coming out of Britain, UK, and some of the baseball efforts they were doing there almost 10 years ago. That's crazy to believe this is year number 9 for Women in Baseball Week already. A lot of girls teams will just cover social media like this is what we're doing. If they can use it to fundraise, even better. I love that. And then, a lot of going back to our roots with podcasts. We'll do special episodes about it. Museums will highlight special exhibits they might have. Libraries will talk about what's in their collection. And it's just a cool thing every year. And it kind of runs itself. Which is how it was designed to do. This isn't something everyone's doing for IWBC. This is IWBC just saying, like, here's cause for celebration. Join us. And then people do. And I think it's great. And it works well that way.
I like it's not so much inclusion with the IWBC, but giving people the opportunity to say, hey, yes, let's celebrate that together. IWBC has given us an idea, a time to focus, reflect, share, and encourage others. And I think that's a lot of what you guys do with this week. So I know myself, I've been, I guess, involved with being an advocate for women's baseball now for a couple, 2-3 years. And I'm going to stop for a second and just pause to say thank you to one woman who really kind of got me interested in this, who I just got noticed today, who's passed away, and that's Parsons-Zipay. And we're recording this on Wednesday, July 15th. And I don't know all the particulars of everything and the arrangements, but I do know that she has made an impact on so many people's lives. And with as being one of the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League women who's still with us until obviously now, and who made an impact with trying to build things with the all-girls baseball tournament, is what I should say, the All-American Women's Baseball Tournament, which is going on, I believe, at the is it the end of this month? No, I'll look it up.
Yeah, 31st, I believe.
There you go. And that's in Durham. So I want to say thank you to Sue here and talk about how she was a reflection of enjoying the game, and much akin to what you're all doing right now with Women in Baseball Week. And that is to celebrate, not just celebrate the past of some of the things that people who have achieved like Sue, but also to take on the mantle of making sure that we're doing everything we can to continue to celebrate women in baseball, and what that's going to be. And let's take a look at it, Ryan. I mean, my gosh, right now you look at, softball, but you got Athletes United softball. You've got women's professional baseball starting up here with tryouts soon. We're looking across this. I'm seeing all these different leagues, and then I'm seeing that the tournament, the international tournament, is going to be held in 2026 in Rockford, Illinois. My gosh, man, it seems like such a confluence of so many things. It's like it's an exciting time for women's baseball.
It really is. And any one of these projects, is quite the undertaking for any group just to host the event, especially if it's the first one ever, or if it's the first time you're hosting it in a specific location, or it's been decades since you've had, professional teams or leagues. But I think there's a power and a support felt when all these things can happen at once, even if they're not all directly involved with each other. It does take, I think, some pressure off, because there's going to be a constant naysayer, element out there that, why do we need this, and who asked for this, and all this type of stuff. But then I think the more you see it happening other places, and the more attention that's brought to all of the sports, I just think it's a good thing, and only helps the individual organizations that are doing the real heavy lifting of fundraising and organizing for all these projects.
I like when I'm looking across, we have capturing history and sharing moments from being able to, whether it be at a library, whether it be a presentation, a play, many different ways of getting, being able to have a touchstone, if you will, to women's baseball, but also current events, whether it be tournaments. Baseball for All has done a lot of that. And I mentioned, obviously, the All-American Women's Baseball Tournament in Durham. But the thing of it is, there's activities that are happening right now that are, visceral and right there in front of you. You can feel it. But then there's also the history of what you're able to find on women's baseball. And I'm going to reflect back on a show we had before, too, because on the Women's Heritage Trail. And where can they find that, by the way, again?
So that's at, it lives on the Women in Baseball Week website, but there's a shortcut, WBHT.org, for Women's Baseball Heritage Trail. We'll take you right to it. And yeah, the map lives right there on our website.
Yeah. Well, I encourage you all to go there as well, because to me, it's part of the continual interest and scholarship of women in baseball. The news earlier days, it's kind of knocked me down a little bit. So what would you like to really talk about as far as the events that are coming up. I would like to hear a little bit more if you can share about the 2026 tournament that's going to be happening in Rockford.
Sure. Let me go back. I'll hit some other things we're doing in Rockford too that kind of touch on your continuity thing you brought up. But so in Rockford, IWBC has a lot going on just in Rockford in person. A lot of our things have been virtual and continue to be over the years, especially during Women in Baseball Week. But right now we have a small exhibit at the Rockford Public Library's main branch. It'll be up all of July and August. The spirit behind this is celebrating women in baseball, Rockford and beyond. So we're drawing attention to the things that have happened in Rockford, but showing how they connect to places outside of town and internationally, and how those things are kind of cyclical. And it's exciting to see, especially with all these new things coming up. So the whole purpose of the exhibit is to highlight what's in the IWBC's archive, our list of resources, artifacts, things like that. So, for example, we have some programs and caps from the Colorado Silver Bullets on display, which were a professional women's team 30 years ago, in the 90s. But it's a way to connect that with, and, oh, by the way, there's another women's professional league planned for next year. And that's still being organized. We're doing everything we can to get part of that in Rockford, whether it's, exhibition games or some tours or something, but they obviously have our support, anything we can do. And similarly, we have some items from international teams that are there. And again, what a great thing to highlight, ahead of the Women's Baseball World Cup group stage coming to Rockford next year. And then this extends throughout the exhibit. We have a whole section on all the women's baseball that's happened down at Bayer Stadium, which of course was the home of the Rockford Peaches for all 12 seasons, but there's also been Baseball for All Nationals tournaments held there. The U.S. women's national team has played exhibition tours there. There's a long history of women's involvement in Rockford alone. And connecting that to today has been what's most exciting about that exhibit. Now, when I was putting it together, it's immediately fun because you're like, I'm playing museum. I get to put it together. It's going to be our own Hall of Fame right here at the library. And then you just have to reflect back on, you can't put everything in there and it all has to make sense. It has to tell some kind of story. There has to be a flow to it. So maybe you have to pull some things out of it. And we did. And I don't know, it's upsetting for like 2 minutes. You're like, but I want them to see everything, but they will see everything eventually. It was a lot of fun to put together. And there's a lot of support here in town for that type of thing. They love Peaches history here in Rockford. Anytime there's some kind of Peaches event, the end of next week, the local Northwoods College summer team is having Peaches night out at Rockford Rivets, and we'll be there too. But the town always shows up for it. It's pretty exciting. Another reason that's cool, though, is Rivet Stadium in Loves Park, Illinois, just outside of Rockford, is where the group stage for the Women's Baseball World Cup will be held the end of July 2026. Now, this is something IWBC started thinking about a couple of years ago, but really started working on once we were up there in Thunder Bay, seeing how the tournament could be organized, how it was structured, and who was coming, what issues were involved with hosting it. So we put in a bid and we were awarded that bid for the group stage for next year. Now, the way it works is with the new format with Women's Baseball World Cup is the year ahead of finals, there are 2 group stages, typically held in different parts of the world. We don't know who will be in our group stage. It'll be 6 countries. Wow. And then 6 countries in a different group stage. And then the 6 from both of those, top 3 finishers from both, will come for finals in 2027, which IWBC is still in the running to host, but those decisions haven't been made yet. But we nevertheless have our work cut out for us. It's pretty exciting. This is like the Olympics of women's baseball coming to Rockford and Loves Park. And we're excited.
Well, I would hope so. My gosh, man, I know I'm a big fan of the USA Women's National Team and all that they've done historically, and a lot of those women, what they've done as far as coaching and managing other young ladies in the game. And I'll just flat out say it here in Tampa, trying to think about getting my way all the way up to Thunder Bay just wasn't going to happen. So the idea of that I'll be able to go to Rockford and see the first stage and potentially the whole, the whole championship later on, that's fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that.
It is. In our proximity to Milwaukee, Madison, Chicago, traveling here is not going to be difficult. And we anticipate pulling from a lot of fan bases from the entire area. But anytime you're hosting something here, you have the potential to get especially U.S. fans, Team Canada fans. Mexico made a big splash at the last World Cup. Of course, we still don't know what teams will be here for this group stage next year, but you can count on all those fans showing up for that. And it's just going to be real exciting. And then you put that on top of the history that the Rockford area has for women's baseball. And it just so happens the dates coincide with Women in Baseball Week next year. So yeah, I'm already done with planning next year because that's a big one. But no, it's just really cool. It's going to be a really cool thing to have here. And I can't wait, honestly, to get started on the nitty-gritty planning process because it's just kind of where I live. And, I'm up for it. I'm ready for it.
Time to dig in and get it going. Wow. Yeah. I'm really happy to hear you guys were able to get that. Like I said, we'll see with the whole championship as well. But as much as I enjoy that, and I think most people do, to be able to come to a place of great history in Rockford, with the history of the Peaches, and it sounds like the support of the local community, is looking to the future. And I know some of the things I've seen on your site too are pointing to like what's happening with the youngers. I think Vassar baseball. They've got something coming up, a baseball camp, and that's something that you guys spotlight on the future as well as what's going on now.
One of the things I kind of appreciate and like this year, there's not a lot on the calendar necessarily for Women in Baseball Week this year because it's being spread out over the year. There's more events happening at different parts of time of year. And that's how it should be. Mm-hmm. You don't just have your events during this week that we designated for just celebrating. So it's kind of cool. There's not less events this year. It's just things are getting spread out a lot more. Like there's plays happening all over the time, camps and clinics, the Vassar camp that you mentioned, more and more of those camps are happening. They're making a point of letting girls know this is open to them, which is important to us. And then a lot of times you're seeing an increased number of women on the staff of these camps, whether they are college baseball players, national team members, both just career coaches. That's a really important thing to see. A lot of the events that we host here, we don't prevent anybody from coming, but if there's an opportunity for young girls and boys to see women umpires, to see women coaches, to see women groundskeepers, obviously we want to encourage that. So there's a lot of that that you're seeing, on the calendar for this year. And I just have to say, like, Canada across the board just never disappoints. And I say this as though it's one organization doing everything. And I want to, dispel the myth that that's what happens in all women's baseball, because it is a lot of different groups with maybe different missions. But overall, just the rising participation in girls in baseball in particular throughout Canada in different leagues, different formats is just really impressive. And that's why they have a strong national team. That's why they really do celebrate things. Not to say other countries don't, but it's just always heartwarming, not only to see the commitment, but then to see the growth over years. Canadian girls baseball, that whole program didn't exist until just a few years ago. We grew out of Toronto, and then it's like in just about every province, and it's a great thing. Canada just also inducted 2 women into their National Baseball Hall of Fame. It's great. Keep it going. Like to see it spread.
Well, you've set the thread out there for a lot of folks to follow on that. And I mean, we talked before we were on the show because you yourself had Hutchinson from
Yeah.
Kentucky, and getting her into I think it was the Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I would encourage folks out there in your own state or wherever, look and find, one, maybe a historical woman in the game and find a way to promote her, just as Ryan did with Miss Hutchinson in Kentucky. And also find a way to support the local women's teams, the local women that are in the game. And so I want to kudos to you on that, because I thought that was an important part. And it's got me thinking about something. I started researching a few of the women here in Florida, and I should be doing something similar here, buddy. So
Nice.
that you have put me on task, and it's time for me to quit talking and start chalking. There was an old pinball pool game that said, stop talking and start chalking. Basically get up and get something done, daggone it. So I have to do that. Well, one of the things I look over this past year, and I see women's baseball really come into play. And it was on MLB TV between the World Series games last year. Jean Fruth putting together her and, forgive me, I cannot think of the gentleman's name who worked with her on this, but a film by Jean Fruth, To See Her, Be Her. To me, that was amazing. Unfortunately, my TV was flickering that night. I didn't get to see it, so I was able to buy it on Prime Video later. But it does show the international appeal of the game. You were talking about developing it in Africa. There's players there and players everywhere. It also had Kelsey Whitmore, and Kelsey's now look like she's going to be the face of the new Women's Professional Baseball League. She and Alex Hugo. And right. I thought that film was such a great way to kick off, I should say, increase awareness, if you will, of the game and the women and what they're doing.
Yeah. And then when you think about it, because, that thing was filmed months before, it was released. So they were capturing what was already in progress, a couple of years ago. So if it helps increase participation around the world, awesome. But it's great that they were really essentially just documenting that participation was already growing around the world, in the way the U.S. national team players, everyone you just mentioned, seeing them involved in so many of those programs, whether it's in Uganda or through youth programs here in the U.S. or Canada or throughout Asia. It's really impressive. And seeing that type of outreach, because I guarantee every one of those national team players have experienced having to fight their way into something at some point and get the adequate resources that they deserve to excel at what they're good at and what they're interested in. And then they're essentially passing that along to other people who could use it, and who knows what that will lead to. So yeah, that was a really powerful film. I was happy to watch same time. Watched it during MLB, and then it's been on tour in like actual theaters throughout the US, like all of this year. Every few weeks it's somewhere else, and there's usually a Q&A with some of the filmmakers or some of the people who are in it. And what a great way, beyond the baseball field, to promote what the game is. And that truly shows is really the human element behind everyone featured in that film. They all have different circumstances. The stuff with Sato from Japan, I loved every minute of that. She is amazing to watch. And then she's been playing pro ball in Canada this summer, I think. And I don't know what's in store for her next. I'm sure World Cup is in there. I'm sure more pro leagues are in there. But this woman is, all over the planet and just showing her talent and inspiring people. And then you learn through the film more of her personal story and everybody's personal stories and what their outside of baseball life is like. And I think it's going to speak to a lot of people, obviously a lot of girls, but I think it just speaks to everybody. You can find something to relate to in this. And who is watching that doesn't love baseball already and can see what baseball does for a lot of people. I never played baseball ever. I was not an athlete, but baseball's done a lot for me, and so I'm sure it's done for a lot of people. So Yeah, great film. Would love to see a follow up to that, in a couple of years, just to see what changes have been made and what the differences are.
I love that when they are rolling this film out, that it's not just that one day on MLB, that it is available on Amazon. And I rarely ever, ever buy anything on Amazon. I mean, I may stream something sometime, but to buy something saying, I am keeping this one. Okay.
Right.
So I bought that one. And to see people like Sato, as you're talking about it in there. And I think she's also just signed on as a special advisor for the WPBL as well. So, but the thing coming back to is I like the idea of when they were taking it on the road and having some Q&A with maybe with some of the people who had been in there, because that really puts it into a sense of a community that already cares about baseball and most likely also cares about women in baseball. And that is a live touch point, much like probably many of the presentations that you and some of the other folks from International Women's Baseball have put together. That being said, I do, like you, I do look forward to hopefully another edition, if you will, or a sequel to what Jean put together. And such amazing cinematography. That woman really knows how to capture a moment on the screen, on film.
That is for sure. She was our keynote speaker for the Women in Baseball conference that IWBC and SABR put together every year. And just sharing some of her photos. Most of it was, I say just, but she had selected photos that she wanted to present during her talk. They, of course, were outstanding, but then just you're actually hearing so much about this one was super easy. And I just happened to get this one. No, this one took a long time to set up to get the way I wanted. And it truly is an art form. And to put that, pardon the pun, but like through the lens of baseball and have it speak additionally to baseball fans or just sports fans in general. It's just a lot of skill and artistry involved there. And what a treat it was to have her as our speaker for the conference, because otherwise you don't get a lot of that. You can buy the books or, see photos online. And sometimes there's description and text that maybe people read or don't read, but just having the artist talk you through what she was presenting was just a real bonus to everyone already being a fan of her work, obviously for the past few years.
As we're looking at Women in Baseball Week coming up, I'm going to make sure that I put up a lot of the things that we've already done in the past, as far as interviews, including with Sue. Well, also we're as far as talking with some of the tournaments in the past, ladies from the USA Women's National Team, and Perry Barber. I mean, there's all these great people who've done so much, and your folks as well from the IWBC, and Leslie Heafy and Kat Williams. So there's a lot of stories out there to be told. I'm going to make sure that on my social media, I'm pushing that out there, and I'm going to make sure that I'm resharing what you're doing, because I want to put all the lights on in the room, people. You're going to find out what's going on with women's baseball, and that while it's celebrated this week, it's also meant as an encouragement to find things to do with women's baseball throughout the entire year and beyond just the United States as well. So, you spoke to Sato, you spoke to Australian baseball, Mexican baseball, Canadian baseball, and all of this, you're seeing some real growth with women's baseball, and we hope to continue to see that in your efforts and all that everybody else who's listening to this does as well.
Absolutely. And we appreciate all you've done, because it's not like you've just been a spokesperson for IWBC projects. You've had a lot of people on and shared information and celebrated a lot of women in the game and the women's game. And there's only going to be more of it, which is exciting and just a little bit terrifying when you just think of all the things that you personally might need to, work on or do, or the stakes involved. But yeah, I don't know. I'm typically not a very patient person. Surprising, because I think personally maybe I am, but when I'm working on things, no, I like to have it all can we get this done in the next day? And that's not how a lot of these work. So it's a mark of maturity and interest and connecting with the right people. And yeah, I think if done right, these things are going to last and they're going to have a positive impact on people in a lot of ways, not just athletes, not just baseball players, not just girls who play baseball. There's a lot out there for us. And then it just continues the work that we're doing. With IWBC, we are preserving, protecting, promoting the history of the game. So all of this is going to be history making by the time it happens.
Yeah.
My own projects, my Heritage Trail, there's only going to be more places to add to that project and to Women in Baseball Week in general. So we're setting ourselves up nicely to, which I've been saying for years, there's a sense of having to flip the culture, right?
Yeah.
Especially here in the U.S. of that, lets everyone know that women are at the center of baseball. They always have been. They will continue to be. If you don't see that, you have to adjust your perspective a little bit. You have to look for it. You have to find some hidden figures in history and then celebrate them. But I think that's what we're doing. I think we're flipping the culture, and that's not always painless for a lot of people, but necessary and a good thing. It's good for everybody.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate what you're doing with your mission and support of women in baseball. And I want to leave with one last thing too, because you're talking about their role, and some talk about the origin of the game of baseball, actually beginning with the women milkmaids on stools, something about I'll have to find something on the history and post that as far as how they, I'm sorry, Abner Doubleday, but the game actually predates you, and it looks like in many ways it could have started origin with some women who were milking the cows, so to speak, too. So there's so many stories. Anyway, I cannot thank you enough, Ryan, for taking some time with us today to talk about Women in Baseball Week and, what's developing, what's coming. And it is interesting to look and reflect over the last 10 years about flipping the culture and so much more, so much further to go, but things are happening.
They certainly are. And maybe we should plan to talk again like a year from now and just see what's changed and see where our attitude is then.
Okay, brother. I'm with you 100% on that. That's Mr. Ryan Woodward, and he is with the International Women's Baseball Center. He is also the creator of Women in Baseball Week, and also make sure you check out the Women's Baseball Heritage Trail. All of these facets are a great place to start to learn even more about the game and people who celebrate it and the women in the game as well. So, Ryan, once again, thank you, buddy, for joining us here today.
Thank you, Mark.
You have been listening to a Baseball Biz on Deck Women in Baseball edition with Mark's guest, Ryan Woodward, founder of Women in Baseball Week and the project coordinator at International Women's Baseball Center. You can discover more at www.womeninbaseballweek.org. Just a reminder, you can find Mark on Blue Sky at baseballbizondeck.bsky.social. You may also find Baseball Biz on Deck on iHeart, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, and at .baseballbizondeck.com. Remember to like and subscribe. Special thanks to X Take Our UX for the music, Rocking Forward.